Why was she the only one at the table who didn't officially exist? The question settled in Harper Johnson's mind like a shard of ice the moment she stepped into the briefing room. It was 2 in the morning, and the secure chamber inside Site Echo carried a hush so absolute that even the fluorescent hum seemed cautious. A single envelope waited on the steel table, thick, cream-colored, stamped with classification markings she had never seen before. Beyond top secret. The ink itself looked heavier than the air. Colonel James Blake stood in the corner, hands behind his back, posture as deliberate as a man reading a final prayer. He didn't offer a chair, didn't break the silence. Harper remained standing, letting the quiet test her resolve. 3 years of training had stripped away the need for small talk. She learned to live inside long pauses. Tonight, though, the stillness felt different, weighted, almost reverent, like the pause before a rifle's report. Blake finally spoke. 3 enemy generals, 12 hours, you alone. His voice didn't rise, but the words carried a gravity that made the concrete walls feel closer. Harper's eyes flicked to the envelope. No names yet, just the outline of something impossible. You'll never be on record, Blake continued. No medals, no testimony. If you fail, no one will know you tried. If you succeed, no one will know it was you. Harper let the words settle. If you fail, failure here meant more than her own death. It meant thousands of civilians, families she'd never meet, erased in coordinated attacks across 3 continents. And if she succeeded, she'd return to silence. No parades, no recognition. Only the quiet hum of an air-filtered room like this one, waiting for another mission that might never come. Are you ready? Blake asked. Harper's heartbeat slowed the way it always did when the stakes climbed. It was a reflex she no longer had to summon. She thought of the life she'd already surrendered. The mother who believed her daughter worked for a global tech firm, the friend who still sent unanswered messages into the void, the tiny apartment in Denver she'd left unlocked on purpose because she would never return. She wondered if Blake knew how final that choice had been. Something inside her tightened, not fear but recognition. This was the path she had chosen, the shadow she had agreed to inhabit. And yet beneath the calm another thought stirred. There's something I haven't told him, something I'm not sure I can ever say aloud. She pushed it away. Always ready, she answered. Blake's eyes narrowed but not in doubt, more like a silent salute. He slid the envelope across the table. Then let's begin. 4 years earlier, on a sunburned rifle range in Arizona, Harper had worn a different face. Back then she was a competitive shooter, 22, sleeveless t-shirt damp with sweat, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense knot. Her focus drew whispers. Shot after shot, 1,000-yard targets fell with surgical precision. Olympic-level marksmen stood behind her, shaking their heads. Harper didn't smile. She barely blinked. She noticed the colonel that day only because he didn't clap. While others cheered her final bullseye, he simply watched, arms folded, eyes measuring something beyond her technique. After the medals were handed out, he approached, his uniform civilian casual but his presence unmistakable. "Miss Johnson," he said, extending a card that bore no insignia, "I'd like to discuss a unique opportunity." "I'm not interested in joining the military," she replied automatically. Recruiters were common as desert dust. "I'm not talking about the military," Blake said, voice even. "I'm talking about something that doesn't officially exist, a program outside every database you can name. It requires you to disappear from normal life, completely." The heat of the range seemed to fade. Harper studied the man's face. The slight squint of someone who'd spent years scanning horizons, the steady calm of a soldier who no longer needed to prove anything. "Why me?" "Because you have a gift," he said simply. "And because there are threats to this country that require solutions outside normal channels, solutions that need someone who doesn't officially exist." Gift, the word landed heavier than praise. It sounded like a sentence. She didn't answer that day. But 2 weeks later, after restless nights and dreams of distant thunder, she called the number on the unmarked card. By dawn, she was on a flight to a location she would never be allowed to name. Site Echo lay buried in the folds of the Rocky Mountains, a place that didn't appear on maps or flight plans. The first time Harper saw it, snow clouds swallowed the sky and the wind tasted of iron. From that day forward, she was a ghost. Her digital footprint erased, her bank accounts closed, her phone number reassigned to a stranger who would never know the name attached to it. Training began before sunrise and ended only when exhaustion blurred the stars. Blake oversaw every hour. Marksmanship she already owned. What he demanded was transformation. Fieldcraft until her knees bled. Infiltration and escape drills until sleep became a luxury. Weeks in the wilderness with nothing but a knife and a compass. Lessons in patience so extreme she learned to slow her breathing until her pulse barely registered. The M24 sniper rifle became an extension of her body. She could field strip it blindfolded, calculate bullet drop and wind drift in her head faster than computers could process. She learned to shoot from helicopters, from the roof of moving trucks, from platforms that swayed like unsteady hearts. But the hardest lessons were the quiet ones. How to wait unmoving for 18 hours for a 3-second window. How to disappear not just from sight but from memory. Sometimes after midnight she would stare at the concrete ceiling of her quarters and wonder who she was becoming. A weapon, a protector, both. The answer shifted with the shadows. Now in the present, Blake's voice pulled her back. 3 targets, he said, spreading satellite photos across the steel table. General Alex Petrov, General Rashid Al-Mansur, General Fun Jang. 3 countries, 3 different security networks. They've been meeting in secret, planning coordinated strikes against American bases and civilians. Intelligence says we have 72 hours before they move. Harper studied the faces. 3 men, 3 different worlds. Petrov, a cold strategist in Moscow's inner circle. Al-Mansur, a zealot with private armies. Jang, the most elusive, hiding behind walls of technology and fear. "What are we talking collateral?" she asked quietly. "Thousands of Americans dead, maybe more. We've tried diplomatic channels. Conventional military action would trigger wars we can't fight." She understood the rest before he said it. "We need someone who doesn't officially exist," Blake finished. "Someone who can remove them before they move, all 3, within 12 hours." It was, by any measure, impossible. 3 countries, 3 heavily guarded compounds, maximum separation of 800 kilometers. No backup, no recognition. A mission designed to erase itself. "What's my support?" "Minimal," Blake said. "Transport between targets, real-time intel, emergency extraction if you're compromised. But if you're caught," he let the words trail into the cold. Harper's gaze returned to the photos. 3 men who had chosen paths that would kill innocents. 3 men who, by sunrise, might never see another dawn. She felt the familiar steadiness slide over her, a quiet clarity that replaced fear with focus. "When do I start?" "Tonight," Blake said. "First target is Petrov outside Moscow. Insert at 2200 hours local. The rest will follow." For a heartbeat neither moved. The world outside might as well have ceased. Blake finally leaned forward, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "Have you ever been asked to do something only you could do? Knowing success means saving lives, but failure means dying alone with no one ever knowing what you tried." Harper held his gaze. The question wasn't rhetorical, it was a benediction. "Sometimes," Blake said, "the heaviest burdens are carried by those whose names will never be remembered." She thought of the quiet apartment she'd abandoned, of her mother's last voicemail saved on a drive she no longer possessed. She thought of the faces in the photographs, men who, in another life, might have been fathers reading bedtime stories instead of war plans. Then she thought of the thousands who would die if she said no. Her answer was the faintest nod. Hours later, a moonless sky stretched endless above the Russian countryside. The roar of the unmarked aircraft faded as she stepped to the open door. Wind howled against her flight suit, but inside her mind there was only stillness. Below lay 20 kilometers of forest and ice between her and Petrov's compound. Harper checked the altimeter, 25,000 feet, higher than most dared jump. She exhaled once, a slow release of every human hesitation, and stepped into the void. The night swallowed her. The wind tore at her suit like a living thing, but Harper felt only the deep calm that came whenever gravity reclaimed her. Black sky above, darker earth below, she was a quiet fragment of nothing, falling faster than thought. 20,000 feet. 15. 10. She pulled the chute at 3, the opening canopy snapping her upward with a whisper the night quickly swallowed. Below, the Russian countryside sprawled like a frozen ocean. Forests of skeletal birch trees shimmered in pale moonlight. She guided the chute toward a clearing barely large enough for a landing, breath steady, eyes scanning for the faintest glow of patrol lights. Nothing. Just the rhythm of her own heartbeat, slow and sure. The impact was soft, a muffled crunch of snow. In one motion she collapsed the chute, buried it beneath a drift, and stripped off the flight suit. Beneath it, a civilian hiker's outfit, dark wool, sturdy boots, a backpack that looked innocuous but carried the disassembled M24 rifle and enough cold-weather gear to survive for days if she had to. She paused, crouched low, listening. The forest breathed around her, branches creaking in the winter wind. Somewhere far off, a dog barked and fell silent. She slipped into the trees. 4 hours of careful movement followed, a silent dance through shadow and frost. Her breath crystallized in the air, but her body temperature remained regulated by specialized layers. She moved like water, weaving around motion sensors and security patrols, avoiding every path that a mind trained in defense would expect. Blake had taught her this. Never challenge a system head-on. Simply move where it cannot see. By 200, she lay on a hillside 1,200 meters from the compound. Through her scope, now assembled with the precision of a pianist's tuning strings, she saw the fortress where General Petrov slept. Floodlights washed the snow in pale gold. Cameras tracked slow arcs. Guards patrolled with predictable boredom. Security this tight could keep intruders out, but no wall, no sensor, no human reflex could stop a bullet faster than sound. Harper settled into her hide, a position she'd chosen from satellite imagery weeks earlier. She lay prone on a bed of insulated fabric, her body blending into the slope. The cold pressed in, but she hardly felt it. The M24 rested against her shoulder like an extension of her bones. Now came the hardest part, stillness. Minutes stretched, hours, the stars wheeled above. Her breathing slowed until each inhale matched the tempo of her heart. She thought of nothing and everything. The faint smell of the forest, the pressure of the trigger beneath her finger, the distant echo of a friend's laugh she hadn't heard in years. Sometimes she wondered if the waiting was what truly changed her. The requirement to become less than a person, more like stone or shadow, a mind observing without judgment until the world itself moved her hand. At 05:58, a single light flickered on in the study window, right on schedule. Harper's pulse did not quicken. She adjusted the scope, noting temperature, wind, humidity. Numbers flowed through her mind with the precision of a computer, barometric pressure falling. Wind 8 kilometers an hour from the northwest. Elevation change 143 meters. Target range 1,247. The window brightened. At 06:04 a figure entered the frame. Tall, broad-shouldered, a coffee cup in hand. Petrov. The intelligence photos had captured every detail of that face. Even through the glass she could see the faint scar on his jaw, a relic from a different war. He turned slightly, reading a document. For a single heartbeat he looked less like a strategist of chaos and more like a man starting his morning. Somewhere, someone loved him. Somewhere, someone would never understand why he did not come home. Harper's breath slowed further. The world narrowed to the thin crosshair and the man behind it. A single squeeze. a suppressed crack no louder than a branch snapping. Through the scope she saw Petrov jerk, the coffee spilling in a slow arc before the body dropped out of sight. A life ended in silence. Harper exhaled and began to move. 90 seconds. That was the window before the security team would triangulate the shot. She broke down the rifle with practiced speed, each piece vanishing into the pack. She slid backward from the hide, leaving nothing but a faint impression in the snow already filling with wind-blown crystals. The compound below erupted with alarms. Searchlights sliced the forest, voices barked commands in Russian. Harper was already 2 kilometers away, slipping through dark corridors of trees toward the exfiltration point. An unmarked helicopter arrived precisely on time, rotor wash scattering snow like sparks. She climbed aboard without a word. Blake's voice crackled in her headset. "One down," he said, quiet but firm. "How are you feeling?" "Ready for target 2, she replied. The next target demanded a different kind of patience. 3 hours later, the Syrian dawn burned copper over the mountains. The helicopter dipped low, depositing Harper on a barren ridgeline before vanishing into the horizon. She crouched, scanning the rugged terrain, jagged rocks, sparse scrub, the distant echo of goats on a hillside. Somewhere beyond those ridges waited General Rashid Al-Mansur, a man whose paranoia was legend. He never stepped outside. He slept in windowless rooms, traveled through underground tunnels, trusted only a handful of bodyguards. Reaching him would require more than a bullet. It would require strategy that felt almost like art. Blake's team had set the trap days earlier. A fabricated defection, a whisper of betrayal from one of the general's own lieutenants. The story was bait too tempting to resist, carefully laced with supporting evidence, intercepted messages, forged photographs, just enough truth to pierce the armor of suspicion. Still, Harper knew it was a gamble. If Al-Mansur sensed deception, he would retreat deeper into his fortress, and she would lose the narrow window forever. She moved across the ridgeline, choosing a position nearly a kilometer from the designated meeting site. The climb scraped her palms raw, but she welcomed the sting. It kept her sharp. By mid-morning she lay hidden among boulders, rifle resting on a bed of sand-colored cloth, the desert heat beginning to rise. Hours passed. A hawk circled high above. The wind carried the faint scent of smoke from a village far below. Harper waited, muscles locked, mind steady. At last, movement. A convoy of vehicles winding through the rocky pass, sunlight flashing off windshields. She adjusted the scope, magnification bringing each detail into focus. Bodyguards, weapons, the slight tilt of a man's head beneath a helmet. Al-Mansur. He emerged, armored vest strapped tight, helmet glinting. Even in the open he radiated caution, his gaze darting like a trapped animal. The bodyguards formed a ring around him, shifting constantly, a living wall. Harper tracked him through the scope, calculating speed and direction. The window would be brief, perhaps 3 seconds when his path aligned just so. Wind, mild but variable. Distance, 980 meters. She breathed out, timing the rhythm of his steps. 3, 2, 1. The M24 spoke again, a soft punctuation against the vast silence. The round slipped between 2 guards as if the desert itself had opened a path. It struck the exposed gap between helmet and armor, a single precise strike. Al-Mansur crumpled before anyone heard the shot. Chaos erupted. Bodyguards shouted, weapons drawn, eyes scanning barren rock where only wind and heat replied. Harper was already moving, rifle broken down, feet silent on the scree. She disappeared into the maze of ridges, leaving nothing but shifting dust. By the time the general's men began searching the high ground, she was kilometers away, her extraction helicopter rising like a mirage against the pale sky. 2 down, Blake's voice came through, low and steady. 1 to go, you still with me? Always, Harper said, though the weight of 2 lives already pressed against her ribs. The final target loomed like a riddle she might never solve. General Fun Jiang was the most protected of them all, a man who had not stepped beyond his compound in 18 months, layers of biometric security, guards who knew every authorized face, buildings designed to deny long sightlines to any sniper. Harper studied the satellite images as the helicopter carried her east, the vibration of the rotors thrumming in her bones. Blake's voice broke the quiet. "There's no shot from outside, not even you can thread this." "Then I need to get inside," she replied. "That's suicide." "Not if I make him come to me." Blake was silent for a beat. "He never leaves." "He will." She scrolled through the images again, eyes narrowing. Something about the helicopter pad caught her attention. Intelligence notes mentioned Jiang's personal pride in the aircraft, how he supervised every maintenance check, how he trusted no one else to oversee it. "What if it fails during the military exercise?" Harper asked. "He'll have to see for himself." Blake hesitated. "You'd have seconds, maybe less." "That's all I need." He exhaled, the sound more resignation than agreement. "You're betting on ego. Always a safer bet than fear." Night fell as the helicopter approached the mountainous region. Below, the compound glowed like a fortress of glass and steel, soldiers moving in complex patterns for the annual exercise. Harper studied the scene, memorizing every path, every light. This would be the most dangerous infiltration she had ever attempted. No scope from a distant hill could save her. She would have to walk among them, invisible in plain sight, and wait for pride to lure a man into her sights. The pilot banked low. "Good luck," he said, though both knew luck had little to do with it. Harper adjusted the stolen military fatigues, checked the forged credentials one last time, and stepped into the night. The mission was far from over, but somewhere deep inside, a calm certainty took root. She had already crossed the point of no return. The ghost was moving closer. The compound looked alive, a shifting organism of steel and light. Searchlights swept the sky in slow, deliberate arcs. Soldiers moved with rehearsed precision, their boots striking the tarmac in a rhythm that carried across the cold night air. Harper adjusted the stolen fatigues, shoulders squared, and stepped from the shadow of a supply truck into the current of bodies. Confidence was everything. Blake's voice from training echoed in her mind. "If you believe you belong, the world will believe it too." She walked with the calm assurance of someone meant to be there, clipboard tucked beneath one arm, helmet visor down just far enough to hide her face. 1,000 tiny details had been chosen to blend, dust on the boots, insignia arranged with casual accuracy, the faint scuff of a long day's work. Hesitation would be the single giveaway. She allowed none. The annual military exercise provided the chaos she needed. Thousands of troops shifted from drill to drill. Vehicles rumbled between checkpoints. Commanders shouted orders lost in the din. Harper moved through it all like a stone slipping beneath a river's surface, unnoticed, unremarked. Inside her pack, the M24 rested in pieces, each component wrapped in maintenance cloth. To any eye it looked like spare equipment. To her, it was a heartbeat waiting to reassemble. The helicopter sat at the center of the compound, a gleaming beast under halogen lights. Even from a distance she could see the care lavished on it, polished panels, rotors aligned with almost obsessive precision. It was more than transport. It was General Fun Jiang's trophy, a personal emblem of status. Intelligence had been clear. He supervised every major inspection himself. Harper studied the guard rotations, nodding the rhythm of their movements the way a musician reads time signatures. 15 seconds between one pair's pass and the next. Enough. When the moment came, she slipped forward, each step measured, the world narrowing to the soft crunch of gravel under her boots. She ducked beneath the belly of the helicopter, heart steady, and reached for the access panel. Her fingers worked fast, 47 seconds of careful sabotage. Not destruction, only a whisper of failure, a deliberate flaw in the fuel system that would reveal itself only during flight. Something subtle enough to survive routine checks but inevitable once airborne. A mechanic shouted nearby. Harper froze, breath suspended. Two soldiers walked past, laughing, the sound harsh in the cold. They didn't look her way. She finished the final adjustment, closed the panel, and stepped back into the river of motion without breaking stride. Now came the second wait. She climbed the maintenance scaffold of a nearby storage hangar, finding a high perch among dusty rafters. From here, she had a clear, oblique view of the helicopter pad, 680 meters away. She unfolded the rifle with the reverence of ritual, each motion silent and precise. Metal clicked into place with a satisfaction that felt almost human. The hours stretched thin. Below, the exercise surged and waned, drills echoing like distant thunder. Harper lay motionless, listening to the subtle language of the compound, the low whine of generators, the occasional bark of a commander, the restless shuffle of soldiers. Her breath slowed to match the mechanical rhythms. She became another piece of the hangar's forgotten machinery. Then a subtle change, the thrum of rotor blades cutting the night. The helicopter's test flight had begun. It lifted gracefully, lights piercing the darkness. For a moment it hung like a star over the compound, rotors slicing the cold air. Then, exactly as planned, the engine faltered. A sharp, metallic cough. A sputter. The bird dipped, recovered, faltered again, and settled awkwardly back onto the pad. A ripple of confusion swept the field. Maintenance crews swarmed. Harper's eyes never left the aircraft. Minutes passed. Mechanics crawled across the machine, flashlights flickering over panels. They found nothing. Harper could almost feel their frustration. She willed the next step into existence. And then he appeared. General Fun Jiang stepped from the armored bunker, his presence sending a hush through the immediate area. Even at this distance, she recognized the deliberate authority in his stride. Surrounded by a ring of bodyguards, he moved toward the helicopter with a precision that betrayed both ego and curiosity. He dismissed most of his escort with a sharp gesture. Pride, Harper thought, always the safer bet. Jiang climbed into the cockpit, leaning forward to peer at the engine housing. For 30 precious seconds, the armored bunker's safest occupant became an exposed man. Harper's breathing slowed. The world contracted to a single, steady crosshair. The suppressed report of the M24 was barely louder than the whisper of the wind. The round entered through the helicopter's open door, striking with mathematical certainty. Through her scope, Harper saw the general slump forward, a marionette with cut strings. The bodyguards reacted an instant too late. Shouts filled the night. Soldiers raced toward the pad. Lights flared, sweeping the compound like frantic suns. Harper was already disassembling the rifle, fingers moving with disciplined speed. Each piece vanished into the pack until nothing lethal remained. She descended the scaffold as alarms wailed, melting into the chaos of shouting soldiers and flashing lights. Confidence again, her greatest camouflage. She moved with the urgency of a loyal soldier responding to crisis, following the tide of confusion toward the perimeter. No one questioned her. No one looked twice. Beyond the outer fence, she found the narrow path through the hills Blake had identified. The night swallowed her once more. Only when the compound lights had dwindled to a faint glow behind her did she allow herself a single deep breath. The extraction helicopter arrived on cue, a dark silhouette against the horizon. She climbed aboard, the rotors drowning the distant echoes of alarms. "All 3 targets eliminated," she said into the headset, her voice steady. On the other end, Blake exhaled, a sound of relief and quiet awe. "Mission complete," he replied. "Harper, what you just accomplished, there's no precedent. 3 high-value targets, 3 countries, 12 hours. You just prevented an attack that would have killed thousands." "That's the job," she answered, eyes fixed on the disappearing lights of the compound. "Stay secret, stay effective, stay alive." The debriefing at Site Echo felt almost surreal after the intensity of the mission. Concrete walls, filtered air, a silence that made the world outside seem imagined. For 2 days she reviewed every detail with Blake, routes taken, variables encountered, shots fired. They spoke in low, clinical tones, as if cataloging someone else's life. When the final report was encrypted and locked away in a vault few even knew existed, the room fell quiet. "You understand," Blake said, "that no one will ever know what you did." Harper nodded. "I didn't do it for anyone to know." Still, the faces lingered in her mind. Petrov with his morning coffee, Almancer glancing over a shoulder at the desert wind, Jang bending to inspect the machine he loved. 3 men she had ended, each with histories, families, hidden corners of humanity. She told herself they had chosen their paths, yet the images remained, flickering behind her eyelids when sleep refused to come. Nights stretched long. She ran through drills until her muscles burned, as if exhaustion might quiet the thoughts, but silence followed her like a second shadow. Weeks later, Blake summoned her to a small conference room she had never entered before. Waiting with him was a woman in civilian clothes, whose presence carried the quiet authority of high rank. "Harper," Blake said, "this is Director Rachel Martinez, CIA." Martinez extended a hand, her grip firm, her gaze assessing. "Or should I say ghost," she added, a faint smile touching her lips. "That's what they're calling you in certain intelligence circles, the operator who doesn't exist." "I prefer Harper," she replied. "Then Harper it is," Martinez said. "What you accomplished was extraordinary. Colonel Blake has been running this operation off the books for 3 years, training you, deploying you on missions that can't be acknowledged. It's unconventional." Harper's eyes narrowed. "Are you here to shut us down?" "Quite the opposite," Martinez said. "I'm here to expand you." She explained with measured precision. A proposal to build an official yet deniable program, classified beyond oversight, funded through channels invisible to Congress, staffed with operators as skilled and untraceable as Harper herself. Missions where diplomacy would fail and traditional forces couldn't tread. "You'd continue working with Colonel Blake," Martinez said, "but with a team, people like you, operators who don't officially exist." The idea landed with unexpected weight. For 3 years Harper had walked alone in the shadows. The thought of others who might understand the silence, who would share the burden, pulled at something she hadn't named in years. "I have one condition," she said quietly. "Operational independence, no interference from politicians, no missions compromised by careers or headlines." Martinez nodded, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. "That's exactly what the Colonel predicted you'd demand, and it's exactly what we're prepared to grant." Harper glanced at Blake. He offered a small, approving nod. "Then I'm in," she said. The months that followed remade her life once again. She traveled through hidden channels, searching the world for those rare few who could disappear as she had. A sniper with impossible urban kills, a close-quarters fighter who moved like wind through corridors, a pilot who could fly anything anywhere, a communications savant who could bend satellites to his will. Each candidate came with their own shadows, their own sacrifices. Harper interviewed them, tested them, broke them down, and rebuilt them. They would become ghosts together, a team that could appear anywhere, accomplish the impossible, and leave nothing but rumor. Late one night, as she filed a final encrypted report, Harper stood alone in the quiet of Site Echo and let the silence settle. The mission in Russia, Syria, and the compound felt like both yesterday and another lifetime. The faces of the 3 generals still visited her dreams, but they no longer haunted. They simply existed, like distant stars, cold and unreachable. She understood something then, something Blake had once hinted at. Victory isn't always a moment. Sometimes it's a weight you learn to carry. Outside, the mountains slept under a moonless sky. Somewhere in the dark, the next mission was already stirring. Why did she hesitate outside the training hangar, a place she had crossed 100 times without a thought? Harper stood in the half-light of pre-dawn, palm resting against the cold metal door, listening to the muffled thrum of machinery inside. Normally, the sounds of site echo steadied her, a reminder that the hidden world still breathed. Tonight they felt heavier, as if the base itself waited to see whether she would step through. Inside, the future of the Ghost program was beginning. Colonel Blake waited by a long steel table cluttered with dossiers. Beside him, Director Martinez looked perfectly composed, her civilian jacket immaculate against the utilitarian concrete walls. Around them stood 5 candidates, the ones Harper had selected, tested, and in her own way challenged to break. They turned when she entered, faces she had come to know through weeks of quiet observation, each one carrying scars both visible and hidden. "Morning, Ghost," Blake said, the faintest smile creasing his weathered face. Harper returned a small nod. The name had stuck despite her protests. In the intelligence world, code names carried their own gravity. Ghost wasn't just what she was, it was what she had chosen to become. Martinez gestured to the group. "Your team, or rather the start of it." Harper moved down the line, meeting each gaze with the measured calm she had perfected. First was David Torres, the urban sniper. Lean, dark-eyed, a quiet intensity radiating from him like heat from stone. He once threaded a shot through a marketplace in Cairo, 800 meters, civilians all around. He met her look without a flicker of ego, only a steady readiness. Next stood Razor, real name classified even to the team for now. Muscles coiled under a plain black shirt, a faint scar tracing his jaw. A close-quarters specialist who moved like a whisper and struck like a hammer. Rumor said he had cleared a 5-story building in under 6 minutes during a hostage rescue no government admitted happened. Phantom came third, their gender and past deliberately blurred. Slim build, eyes the color of winter skis, a talent for disappearing in plain sight. Records of entire nights spent inside foreign intelligence headquarters, leaving with data no one knew had been touched. Then Phoenix, Jessica Drake, pilot extraordinaire. Copper hair tied back in a braid, freckles barely visible under the hangar lights. Her reputation was legend. She could land a crippled helicopter on a postage stamp of rooftop in a crosswind and still make it look like art. Finally, Signal. Younger than the rest, quiet to the point of invisibility, but his fingers danced over any keyboard like a pianist chasing fire. Satellite hijacks, biometric spoofs, entire digital landscapes rewritten without a trace. 5 people, 5 different worlds, each erased from official records, each ready to vanish from the life they once knew. Harper saw in them reflections of her own first day, hesitation buried beneath resolve, the faint ache of severed ties. Blake spoke first. "You know why you're here. Officially, you don't exist. Unofficially, you're about to become the most capable covert unit this country has ever fielded. Harper will lead you." The weight of those words settled on her shoulders. She had been a lone operator for so long that leadership felt almost alien. But as she looked at the team, something shifted. These weren't replacements for solitude. They were extensions of it, people who understood silence as a language. "We train until silence is instinct," Harper said, voice low but carrying. "We act where no one else can. Missions you'll never speak of, victories no one will celebrate. If that isn't what you want, walk out now." No one moved. The months that followed fused them into something more than a unit. Training consumed their days and often their nights. Site echo echoed with gunfire, with the thud of boots on obstacle courses, with the faint electronic hum of signals, endless testing of new intrusion software. Harper drove them harder than even Blake expected. Long-range marksmanship at impossible distances. Close-quarters combat drills until sweat pooled on the concrete. Surveillance exercises where Phantom routinely turned the tables, slipping past sensors no one else could beat. She watched them fracture and reform, each weakness revealed and then burned away. They learned to move as a single organism, 5 different skills converging into something that could adapt to any threat. Sometimes she wondered if she was forging a team or a family. The thought startled her each time. Family was a word she had buried years ago. Yet moments arrived that she could not deny. David passing her a cup of coffee after an 18-hour stakeout, the quiet respect in his eyes. Razor offering a wry half-smile before a brutal sparring match, as if to say, "I trust you to hurt me." Phoenix humming a tune under her breath as she checked rotor blades, a melody that softened the hangar's hard edges. Signal leaving a single encrypted message on her console late one night, for the ghosts who keep the world breathing. These were not grand gestures, only fragments of connection, but they slipped past the armor she'd built. And though Harper never spoke of it, a part of her felt the faint warmth of belonging, something she had believed impossible. Their first mission together arrived like a storm cloud with no warning. Blake called them into the operations room at 400. Satellite images glowed across the wall, a remote compound in the Hindu Kush, occupied by a rising extremist leader whose network had begun plotting mass casualty attacks across 3 continents. Conventional forces couldn't reach him without triggering international conflict. Diplomacy had failed. "This is the threshold," Blake said. "You succeed, you prove the program works. You fail, this program ceases to exist." He turned to Harper. "Your call." Harper studied the data, guard rotations, weather patterns, intel on the target's habits. Every detail slid into place like pieces of a familiar puzzle. "We go in tonight," she said. Not a single voice questioned her. The infiltration unfolded beneath a black sky heavy with winter stars. Phoenix piloted the insertion helicopter with effortless grace, skimming jagged ridges where even moonlight feared to linger. Harper watched the team with a quiet pride she would never admit aloud. Razor checking weapons with calm efficiency, Phantom already half vanished into the shadows, David adjusting the custom optics on his rifle, Signal murmuring updates through the encrypted comms. They moved like smoke across the snow. Razor neutralized the outer sentries in silence. Phantom slipped through electronic defenses, opening a path no alarm would mark. Signal rerouted satellite coverage, creating a blind spot that existed only in their minds. Harper took position on a cliffside, her rifle already zeroed. The target appeared exactly when intelligence predicted, emerging from a low stone building to inspect a shipment. Distance, 1,400 meters. Wind, unpredictable, a knife-edged gust cutting across the valley. She felt the old calm settle in. Numbers aligned, breath slowed. But she hesitated, a single heartbeat longer than usual, aware of the team depending on her, of the humanity of the figure below. Then she exhaled. The shot traveled across the frozen air like a silent promise. The target fell without a sound. "Objective complete," David's voice murmured in her earpiece, quiet admiration threading through the words. They exfiltrated as one, not a trace left behind. Not even the wind remembered they had been there. Back at Site Echo, Blake met them with a rare smile. "Outstanding," he said. "One threat erased, thousands of lives saved, and not a single nation will ever know." The team dispersed to their quarters, exhaustion written in the slump of shoulders, but Harper lingered alone in the operations room. The mission's silence pressed against her chest. She thought of the faces from her first solo mission, Petrov with his coffee, Al Manser glancing at the desert wind, Jang bending over his beloved helicopter. Now another face joined them, nameless, fading even as it etched itself into her memory. David approached quietly, his presence more a shadow than a sound. "You did what needed doing," he said. "I know," she replied, eyes fixed on the blank screens. "But knowing doesn't make it lighter." He nodded, understanding without judgment. Maybe it isn't supposed to be light. When he left, Harper remained in the dim glow of the monitors. the quiet stretching until it felt almost like absolution. Weeks turned into months. Missions came and went, each one more complex than the last. They disrupted arms networks before weapons could reach city streets. They dismantled cyber operations poised to black out power grids. Each time they disappeared as silently as they arrived. Governments speculated. Intelligence agencies whispered. No one had proof. And with every mission, Harper felt the strange duality deepen. The fierce pride of a job only they could do, and the quiet ache of deeds destined to remain forever unnamed. One evening, after a long debrief, Phoenix joined her on the overlook above the valley. The sky was a canvas of cold stars. "Ever think about leaving?" Phoenix asked softly. Harper considered the question. The thought of returning to a world of daylight and conversation felt almost unreal. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I wouldn't know what to do there." Phoenix nodded, "Same." They stood in silence, the mountain wind carrying unspoken truths. Neither woman said the obvious, that leaving was impossible, not because they lacked the will, but because the work would never be finished. When the next call came, Harper didn't hesitate. She had long accepted the paradox of her existence, a life defined by action and absence, by victories no one would celebrate. She shouldered the rifle case, the weight both burden and anchor. Somewhere beyond the mountains, another threat waited, a name she didn't yet know, a face she would never forget. And as the helicopter blades began to spin, Harper felt the familiar quiet settle once again. The world would sleep through the night. The ghosts would keep it safe. Why did the snow feel heavier tonight, as if each flake carried the weight of another unspoken name? Harper crouched on the overlook outside Site Echo, the cold biting through her gloves. Below, the valley lay quiet, its darkness broken only by the pale spill of moonlight across the peaks. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter's rotor wash stirred the air, a faint, familiar thrum that meant another mission was coming. She closed her eyes and let the sound pass through her, neither comfort nor warning, just a reminder of the life she had chosen. The ghost team was becoming legend in the spaces where legends are never told. Months had blurred into a series of operations. A weapons shipment intercepted on the Somali coast, a cyber attack neutralized before it could black out an entire European grid, a high-value financier eliminated in the narrow alleys of Casablanca. Each mission invisible, each success a story that would never be spoken outside a sealed room. Yet tonight Harper felt a different pull, an unease she couldn't name. Perhaps it was the memory of the last target, a warlord whose final breath had echoed in her headset like a question. Or perhaps it was something closer, a tension in the team she'd begun to sense but not address. She descended the ridge and entered the operations hangar. The familiar smell of oil and cold metal greeted her. Blake stood by the big screen, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Around him the team gathered, David with his quiet focus, razor-stretching shoulders that never seemed to tire, Phantom barely more than a ripple of shadow near the wall, Phoenix twirling a flight checklist between nimble fingers, Signal hunched over a tablet alive with encrypted code. Blake wasted no time. Intel confirms a rogue bioweapons project in northern Myanmar. A scientist named Dr. Vang has engineered a pathogen with a 90% fatality rate. He plans to sell it to the highest bidder within 72 hours. He tapped the screen. Satellite images flared to life. Dense jungle, a hidden lab disguised as a medical research facility. Conventional forces can't reach him without sparking an international crisis. Local authorities are compromised. We go in silent, extract the samples, and end the program. Harper, you lead. The room absorbed the stakes without a sound. Even Signal, usually lost in his own digital world, looked up, eyes hard. Harper studied the map. Jungle terrain, high humidity, unpredictable weather. Perfect for cover, brutal for exfiltration. "What's the civilian presence?" she asked. "Minimal," Blake said, but the area is crawling with mercenaries, former soldiers well armed. David spoke first, his voice low. Long-range shots will be tough. Visibility in that canopy is near zero. We adapt, Harper replied. Razor close quarters will be yours. Phantom infiltration. Signal will need eyes on every satellite over Southeast Asia. Phoenix, she turned to the pilot, get us in and out before anyone knows we were there. Phoenix gave a small, confident grin. I'll make the jungle think we were never born. No one questioned the plan. They never did. The insertion began beneath a curtain of monsoon rain. Phoenix guided the helicopter through clouds that churned like molten steel, instruments flickering with every lightning flash. Harper sat near the open hatch, rain stinging her face, mind narrowing to the mission ahead. When they touched down on a hidden riverbank, the team slipped into the jungle without a word. The air was thick, almost liquid, heavy with the scent of wet earth and rotting vegetation. Every sound, every drop of water, every distant call of an unseen bird felt amplified. Harper led, machete slicing through foliage. Behind her, Phantom moved like mist, barely bending the leaves. Razor's presence was a quiet strength, David's rifle steady despite the rain. Signal brought up the rear, eyes flicking from the glowing tablet to the dark trees. Hours passed in relentless humidity. Mosquitoes whined. The ground sucked at their boots. Yet the team moved with the precision of a single organism, communicating with small gestures, the occasional whisper. Finally, the jungle thinned, revealing the compound, a low building masked by camouflage netting and guarded by men with the posture of professionals. Harper scanned the perimeter. Spotlights swept in lazy arcs. Security cameras blinked through the rain. She signaled Phantom. The infiltration specialist disappeared into the undergrowth. Minutes later, a section of the perimeter lights winked out, darkness folding across the compound like a closing hand. Harper breathed once, move. They slipped through the gap, water dripping from every surface. Inside the fence, the air smelled of chemicals and fear. A single guard rounded the corner. Razor moved faster than sight, a brief struggle, then silence. The guard crumpled, unconscious. Signal worked a control panel, fingers a blur. Cameras looping, he whispered. They reached the lab entrance without a sound. Harper pushed the door open, rifle raised. The interior smelled of antiseptic and ozone. Stainless steel counters gleamed under fluorescent lights. And there, at the far end, stood Dr. Vang, small, bespectacled, eyes wide with the sudden knowledge of ghosts. He reached for a console. David's voice cut the air. Don't. Vang froze. We need the samples, Harper said quietly, stepping forward. They're not ready, Vang stammered. It's unstable, you don't understand. Razor's presence behind her ended the protest. Signal swept through the lab, collecting vials, data drives, anything that could replicate the pathogen. Harper kept her eyes on Vang, reading the tremor in his hands. She didn't want to kill him, not if she didn't have to. You can walk away, she said, but this ends tonight. For a moment she thought he might lunge for the console anyway. Then his shoulders sagged. The fight left him like air from a punctured lung. We're clear, Signal announced. Harper nodded. Move out. The exfiltration should have been clean. It was. Halfway back to the river, the jungle erupted with gunfire. Mercenaries poured from the darkness, muzzle flashes strobing the trees. The team scattered for cover, returning fire in short, controlled bursts. Ambush, David hissed into comms. Keep moving, Harper ordered. Phantom left flank, Razor with me. Rain turned the ground to slick mud as bullets tore through leaves. Harper felt the old stillness settle over her, a clarity honed by years of training. She fired once, twice, each shot deliberate, each target falling into the storm. Razor moved like a phantom of his own, silent and lethal. David covered the rear, his rifle singing its deadly rhythm. Phoenix's voice crackled through the headset. "LZ hot but clear for now. 2 minutes." They broke through the last line of trees, hearts pounding. The helicopter loomed like a promise of escape, rotors whipping the rain into a furious halo. A final burst of gunfire shattered the night. A round grazed Harper's shoulder, a searing flash of pain. She staggered, but Razor's arm steadied her, dragging her toward the ramp. "Go," Phoenix shouted. The helicopter lifted as tracers streaked past. The jungle fell away, swallowed by darkness and rain. Back at Site Echo, the debriefing carried a different weight. The mission was a success. Samples secured, threat neutralized. Yet the ambush gnawed at Harper. Someone had tipped off the mercenaries. Someone had known. Blake shared her concern. "There's a leak," he said quietly. "Could be foreign intelligence. Could be someone inside one of our partner agencies." Harper felt the words like a blade. Trust was their only currency. A leak meant every mission, every life hung by a fraying thread. Days turned to weeks as they hunted for the source. Signal dove into layers of encrypted traffic, tracing phantom transmissions across continents. Phantom worked human networks, moving through cities like a rumor. Still, nothing. During those nights, Harper found herself alone more often, staring at the mountains beyond Site Echo. The silence she once welcomed now carried a different sound, something closer to doubt. David noticed first. "You're carrying this too hard," he said one evening, approaching her on the overlook. "It's my job," she replied. "It's ours," he corrected gently, "all of us." His words settled deeper than she expected. For years she had borne every mission like a solitary stone. Now, standing beside a team that had risked everything, she began to understand a quiet truth. The burden was never meant to be hers alone. When the breach was finally traced, it came from a place they hadn't expected, a subcontractor within an allied intelligence agency, bribed and blackmailed into feeding information to an unknown buyer. The discovery brought no relief, only a reminder of how fragile their invisible world could be. Blake addressed the team in the operations room, voice low but firm. "This won't be the last attempt. The more effective we become, the more others will try to find us. Stay sharp. Stay unseen." After the briefing, Phoenix caught Harper's arm. "You okay?" Harper hesitated. Then for once she didn't hide behind the usual mask. "I will be." Phoenix gave a small, understanding nod. "We all will." That night Harper returned to the overlook. The sky was clear now, stars sharp against the black. She thought of the scientists' terrified eyes, the mercenaries lost to the jungle, the near miss of the bullet that had burned her shoulder. She thought of the team, David's quiet steadiness, Razor's unwavering strength, Phantom's eerie calm, Phoenix's fearless skill, Signal's restless brilliance. They were more than ghosts now. They were the thin line between chaos and the lives of countless strangers. Somewhere people she would never meet were breathing safely because of what they had done. They would never know. That was the point. Harper let the silence settle, not as a weight but as a promise. The world would keep sleeping. And the ghosts would keep moving in the dark. Why did the mountain wind sound different tonight, like a warning instead of a song? Harper stood on the perimeter catwalk above Site Echo, the steel grating cold beneath her boots. Below, the compound glowed in pools of amber light, the hum of generators steady and familiar. Yet something in the night felt off, as if the air itself carried a message she hadn't learned to read. A month had passed since Myanmar. The scientist was in custody, the samples secured in facilities even Harper wasn't cleared to enter. On paper the ghost team was dormant, their missions complete. But still, they trained, sharpening skills that could never dull. Each day began with the sound of weapons fire in the valley and ended with the quiet discipline of maintenance drills and data sweeps. It should have felt like rest. Instead, it felt like waiting. Inside the operations room, Director Martinez and Colonel Blake stood over a flickering screen. Their faces were drawn tight, eyes reflecting lines of encrypted text. When Harper entered, Blake looked up first. "We've got something," he said, his voice low, "and it's not good." The satellite image on the wall showed a desolate coastline scarred by wind and salt. Martinez tapped a finger to highlight a cluster of structures that looked like abandoned warehouses. "Baltic Sea," she said. "On the surface, it's an old shipping yard. Intelligence suggests otherwise. 3 separate sources confirm the site is being used as a covert weapons exchange. Surface-to-air missile systems, advanced drone technology, and," she hesitated, "a prototype nuclear device." Harper's stomach tightened. "Who's running it?" "Unknown," Martinez said. "But someone is orchestrating an auction. Multiple hostile actors invited. In 4 days, that prototype will vanish into the hands of whoever pays the most." "And no nation wants its fingerprints on the takedown," Blake added. "If we wait, it disappears. If we act officially, it starts a war, which leaves us." Harper studied the grainy images. The facility sprawled across a windswept peninsula, guarded by a web of radar and motion sensors. Ships came and went under the flag of no country. A storm was rolling in, gale-force winds, freezing rain. Perfect cover or perfect disaster. "We're in," Harper said without hesitation. "What's the objective?" "Secure the prototype. Eliminate the network running the sale. No evidence left behind," Blake said. He looked at her with something between pride and worry. "This will be the most complex operation we've ever attempted." Harper turned to her team. "Gear up. We move at nightfall tomorrow." Not one of them blinked. The North Sea welcomed them with claws of ice. Phoenix flew low, hugging the radar shadow of the coastline, rain slashing against the windshield like shards of glass. The helicopter shuddered under the assault, but Phoenix's hands never wavered. "Winds gusting to 60 knots, she said over the comm, calm as always. "Feels like a gentle breeze." David gave a quiet snort. "Your idea of gentle scares me." Razor checked his weapons with methodical precision. Phantom adjusted the thermal camouflage draped over their shoulders, eyes scanning the darkness for shapes that didn't belong. Signal hunched over his portable console, a halo of blue light on his face. Harper watched them all, the steady rhythm of their readiness syncing with her own. This was the pulse of the team, no bravado, no wasted words, only focus. They touched down on a jagged stretch of rock miles from the target. The storm masked their arrival, wind and surf roaring like an angry ocean god. From here, they would move on foot. The trek across the peninsula was brutal. Freezing rain soaked their gear, mud sucking at every step. Signal led them through the labyrinth of sensors, feeding data to their earpieces as he quietly bent digital defenses to his will. "Radar looped," he whispered. "Cameras blind, keep moving." They reached the outer perimeter just before midnight. The facility loomed like a steel skeleton against the storm, lights glowing weakly through sheets of rain. Guards huddled under tarps, their vigilance dulled by weather and the false security of technology. Harper signaled. Phantom melted into the shadows, disabling patrols with silent precision. Razor and David slipped through the gap, rifles poised. The team moved like a single organism, a shadow gliding through the storm. Inside the compound, the air smelled of oil and salt. Crates stacked like tombstones bore no markings. Harper's eyes caught the faint glow of a reinforced hangar at the far end, a different kind of light, guarded by a heavier security presence. "That's it," she murmured, "the device." Signal's voice came through, low and urgent. "I can delay the internal sensors for 7 minutes. After that, the system reboots." "7 is enough," Harper replied. They advanced, using the storm's fury as their cloak. A guard rounded the corner. Razor moved first, one swift motion, a silent takedown, the man lowered to the ground like a falling leaf. David covered the approach, his rifle steady despite the wind's relentless push. At the hangar door, Signal knelt, fingers dancing across the portable console. Manual override in 3, 2, 1. The door slid open with a hiss, swallowed by the storm. Inside, the prototype waited, sleek, deadly, a weapon designed to disappear into headlines only after it had already killed. Package secured, Harper said, eyes sweeping the chamber. But something felt wrong, the hair-raising sense of unseen eyes. The first shot came from the rafters. Glass shattered as a bullet ricocheted off a steel beam. The team scattered for cover. Automatic fire erupted from hidden catwalks, mercenaries lying in wait. Ambush, David snapped. Harper's mind sharpened to a fine edge. They'd been expected. Signal, lock this place down, she ordered. Working, he shouted over the gunfire. Phantom appeared behind a stack of crates, returning fire with clinical precision. Razor moved like a predator, slipping between shadows, eliminating threats before they could aim. Harper crouched behind a support column, calculating angles. Whoever planned this knew their patterns, knew the ghosts would come. That meant an informant, again. Her radio crackled, Blake's voice faint through interference. Extraction compromised, storms grounding air support. You're on your own. The words landed like ice, but Harper felt no panic, only the familiar calm of necessity. We finished the job, she said. The firefight stretched into a brutal rhythm. Rain poured through shattered skylights, mixing with smoke and the acrid scent of spent rounds. The ghosts moved as they were trained. Silent communication, lethal efficiency. One by one, the mercenaries fell. Signal's voice finally cut through. Doors sealed, cameras wiped, external feeds looping. Good, Harper said. Prep the package for transport. But before they could move, a new sound rose above the storm, the deep thrum of approaching rotor blades. Through a jagged hole in the hangar roof, Harper glimpsed a black helicopter descending, lights off, blades carving the rain. Not ours, Phoenix warned. A rope dropped. Figures in tactical gear began sliding down, fast, professional. Another team, David muttered. Not mercenaries, military. Harper's instincts screamed. Whoever these intruders were, they weren't here to negotiate. Ghosts fall back, she ordered. Alternate exfil route, now. They moved as one, slipping through a maintenance tunnel that reeked of rust and salt. Behind them, the sound of boots on metal echoed like a chase through a nightmare. Signal guided them through the warren of corridors, rerouting power grids to cover their escape. Razor and David took rear guard, trading bursts of gunfire with the pursuing force. Phantom scouted ahead, every sense attuned to danger. They emerged onto the storm-lashed pier where their secondary boat exfil awaited, an unmarked craft bobbing violently in the surge. Phoenix leapt aboard first, firing up the engines. Move, she shouted. Harper was last across the slick planks. A bullet sparked against the pier beside her, spraying shards of wood. She dove aboard as Phoenix gunned the throttle. The boat surged into the black water, waves hammering its hull. Behind them the hangar burned, lightning illuminating the chaos. The mysterious helicopter hovered for a moment, then peeled away into the storm, leaving only questions. Hours later, soaked and exhausted, they reached an Allied naval vessel waiting in international waters. The prototype, secured in a sealed case, was transferred to a vault deeper than most prisons. The ghost stood on the deck, salt spray mixing with the cold dawn light. Blake's voice came through the secure channel, rough with fatigue. You did it, but someone knew you were coming, again. Harper stared at the horizon, the gray line where sea met sky. We have a traitor, she said quietly. Possibly more than one, Blake replied. This is bigger than we thought. The weight of his words settled like stone. They had survived, but the storm inside their own ranks was only beginning. Back at Site Echo, tension ran like an electric current. The ghosts debriefed in near silence, each aware that trust, their most vital weapon, was now a question mark. Phoenix cleaned salt from the helicopter's rotor blades without a word. Razor sharpened a knife he rarely needed to use. David disassembled and reassembled his rifle as if repetition could reveal an answer. Phantom vanished into the base's hidden corridors, searching for patterns invisible to others. Signal buried himself in data, eyes bloodshot from endless code. Harper moved among them like a quiet sentinel, offering neither comfort nor suspicion. But inside, she felt the fracture widening. A leak once was bad luck, twice was betrayal. Late that night she stood again on the perimeter catwalk, the cold biting through her jacket. She thought of the scientist in Myanmar, the mercenaries in the jungle, the hidden soldiers in the Baltic storm. All pieces of a puzzle she couldn't yet see. David joined her, silent for a long time before speaking. Whoever's feeding them, they're close. I know, she said. You think it's one of us. Harper kept her gaze on the dark horizon. I think it doesn't matter what I think. We find proof. Until then, we stay a team. He nodded, understanding the weight behind the words. Then we stay a team. The wind howled across the mountains, carrying with it the promise of another mission, another night where names would never be spoken. Harper felt the old calm settle, heavier now, threaded with doubt but unbroken. The world would keep sleeping. The ghosts would keep moving. And somewhere in the dark, betrayal waited with patient eyes. Why did the base feel colder when every door was locked and every camera watched? Harper moved through sight echoes dim corridors long after midnight, boots whispering over polished concrete. The facility had never been warm, steel and stone built for silence, not comfort. But tonight the chill seemed to seep deeper, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The ghosts had survived the Baltic storm, but they had not returned whole. Somewhere inside their invisible world, a traitor moved unseen. 2 operations compromised in less than a year could not be coincidence. And in a unit where every identity was erased, trust was more fragile than glass. She found Blake in the small conference room off the command center, staring at a bank of encrypted screens. His shoulders, usually unshakable, sagged slightly in the glow. You can't sleep either, he said without turning. Someone's feeding our enemies, Harper replied. That's not the kind of problem that waits until morning. Blake rubbed a hand across his face. I've triple-checked every outside contact. Martinez has, too. The leak isn't in the usual places. Harper let the silence stretch. Then it's in the unusual ones. His eyes finally met hers, the unspoken question sharp between them. Do you think it's one of the team? She didn't answer, not yet. Morning brought a new mission before the old wound could close. Director Martinez arrived in person, her civilian coat still damp from the mountain snow. A high-ranking arms broker in Istanbul, she said, placing a folder on the table. Codename, Arslan. He's brokered deals for every major conflict of the last decade, and he's the one selling information about covert operators, including, we believe, you. Signal's head snapped up, so the leak isn't internal. Maybe, Martinez said. Arslan could be buying from someone close to us, or he could just be gathering whispers from the dark web. Either way, he's the common thread. He holds a private auction in 48 hours. We need him alive, long enough to tell us who's paying for your names. Harper studied the dossier. Istanbul, crowded, chaotic, perfect for vanishing. Capture, not kill, she said. Correct, Martinez confirmed. But his security is layered, and he'll disappear the moment he senses a trap. David leaned forward, calm but firm. Then we make the trap invisible. Harper looked around the table, David's steady eyes, Razor's coiled readiness, Phantom's unreadable calm, Phoenix's quiet confidence, Signal's restless energy. We move tonight, she said. The city unfolded beneath them like a constellation of gold and silver. Istanbul at night was a labyrinth of alleys and ancient stones, a place where centuries whispered through every turn. Phoenix brought the helicopter to a silent hover on a rooftop far from prying eyes. From there, they descended into the streets, becoming shadows amid the endless hum of traffic and the scent of roasted chestnuts from midnight vendors. Signal guided them through the maze with a voice barely louder than the crackle of their comms. Arslan's suite is top floor of the Sinar Hotel. 2 armed guards in the hall, more in the lobby. Cameras patched into a private network, already on a loop. Phantom slipped ahead to scout, melting into the human tide. Razor followed with the patience of a predator, eyes scanning every corner. David carried his compact rifle under a coat, a silent promise in the crowded night. Harper felt the city breathe around them. The call of distant music, the low murmur of late-night conversations, the faint vibration of a tram passing beneath the street. She remembered visiting Istanbul once as a child with her parents, a memory she'd buried so deep it startled her now. She let it pass. Inside the hotel, marble floors gleamed under chandelier light. Wealth and menace shared the air. They moved as guests, blending with the quiet luxury until Phantom signaled from the stairwell. The path was clear. They reached Arslan's suite without a sound. 2 guards stood outside, bored but alert. Razor struck first, 2 swift motions, each man lowered gently to the carpet. David covered the hallway, eyes like ice. Harper entered. Arslan stood by the window, a silhouette against the Bosphorus lights. He turned slowly, a thin smile curving his lips. "I wondered when the ghosts would arrive," he said in accented English. "You hide well, but not perfectly." His calm chilled her more than any weapon. "You've been selling information," Harper said. "Names, hours." Arslan spread his hands. "Information is a river. I do not create it. I only guide its flow." "Who's paying you?" she asked. He tilted his head, eyes gleaming with a strange amusement. "Many rivers feed the sea. Some currents you do not wish to know." Razor stepped forward, but Harper lifted a hand. Violence would break the fragile moment. They needed him talking. "You already know what I am," she said quietly. "You know what I've done, so you know I'm patient, but I don't leave without answers." For the first time, his composure faltered. He studied her face, searching for something, fear, mercy, maybe a reflection of himself. Finally he spoke. "There is a name whispered in the markets and encrypted channels. They call him Janus, a face in 2 directions. He buys secrets from those you trust and sells them to those who wish you dead. I do not know which of your allies feeds him, but he knows you, Ghost. He knows you all." The name hung in the room like smoke. Before Harper could press further, Phantom's voice cut through the comms. "Company, 3 cars, armed, 30 seconds." Arslan's smile returned, but there was fear in his eyes now. "You see, the sea calls for its river." Harper moved fast. "Razor, secure him. Signal, find us a path." The extraction was a blur of corridors and fire escapes, of muffled gunfire echoing through narrow alleys. They vanished into the city as the hotel erupted behind them in chaos. Back at Site Echo, the interrogation continued. Arslan remained calm, even as Signal dismantled the layers of his encrypted accounts, and Phantom traced his global network of brokers. "He's telling the truth about Janus," Signal said at last. "Transactions point to a single buyer, sophisticated, always 2 steps ahead." Blake paced the room. "Janus, whoever they are, they've penetrated our allies and our shadows. That's a problem." Harper studied Arslan through the one-way glass. The broker sat in silence, hands folded, eyes distant, as if he had already accepted the inevitability of his role. Later, alone in her quarters, Harper stared at the name scrawled on her tablet. Janus, the Roman god with 2 faces, one looking forward, one back, a perfect symbol for someone who lived between worlds. The idea that an unseen enemy knew her team's every move gnawed at her. She thought of the Baltic ambush, of the jungle firefight, of every mission where the enemy had seemed too ready. Somewhere out there, Janus was watching. Weeks passed with no new leads. Missions continued, surgical strikes on hidden stockpiles, covert rescues of scientists targeted by hostile states, but every success carried an undertone of unease. Harper found herself studying her own team in quiet moments, Razor's unwavering loyalty, David's calm precision, Phoenix's fearless grace, Phantom's inscrutable silences, Signal's restless brilliance. She trusted them. She had to, and yet the shadow of Janus made every silence suspect. One evening, after another long day of fruitless data analysis, Harper walked the outer catwalk. The mountains stretched black against a field of stars. David joined her without a word, as he often did. "You think Janus is one of ours," he said finally. "I think Janus is whoever we don't expect," she replied. "Then we keep moving," he said, voice steady. "Force the shadow into the light." His calm anchored her as it always had. But even as they stood side by side, Harper knew the game had changed. Janus was no longer just a name. Janus was a hunt. 2 nights later the hunt struck first. The alarm klaxon shattered Sight Echo's midnight quiet. Harper bolted upright, rifle in hand before the second wail echoed through the halls. Red lights strobed the corridors. "Security breach," Signal's voice snapped over comms. "South gate, system override from inside." Inside. Harper sprinted through the compound as gunfire erupted near the motor pool. She found Razor already in motion, blades flashing in the crimson light. Phantom emerged from shadow, eyes narrowed to slits. David joined her at the gate. External sensors went dark. Someone killed them. "Not someone," Signal corrected through the comm. "Something. Code injection I can't trace. It's like the system attacked itself." The south gate yawned open, cold mountain wind slicing through the compound. Beyond it, darkness stretched like an invitation. Harper felt the realization settle like a stone in her gut. Janus wasn't coming for them. Janus was already here. The night ended with the gate secured and the breach sealed, but no intruder found. Cameras showed only flickers of static, as if the mountain itself had erased the truth. At dawn, Harper gathered the team in the operations room. Their faces were pale in the cold light, each pair of eyes holding the same question. "Someone wanted us to know," Harper said quietly. "This wasn't just infiltration. This was a message." "From Janus," Phantom said, voice a soft rasp. Harper met each gaze in turn. "Whoever they are, they're inside our networks, inside our allies, maybe closer. We keep training. We keep moving, but from this moment on, nothing we do is routine, not one breath." The team nodded, silent but unbroken. Outside, the wind howled across the peaks. The mountains gave no answers. Somewhere in that endless dark, Janus watched with both faces, past and future, waiting for the next move. Why did the morning light feel like an accusation? Harper stood on the ridge above Sight Echo as the first sun edged across the mountains, the sky a bruised blue fading into pale gold. Below, the compound still bore the scars of the midnight breach. Security lights flickering, guards on edge, cameras replaced and recalibrated. She inhaled the sharp air and tasted metal, as if the dawn itself carried a warning. Janus was still out there. Or closer. Maybe already inside. Behind her, boots crunched over the frost. Blake approached, his expression lined by fatigue but sharpened with resolve. "Director Martinez is on her way," he said. "She wants a full assessment before noon. She's bringing a counterintel unit." Harper didn't turn. "You think they'll find something we ca?" "They might find what we can't admit," Blake said quietly. "But I'm not convinced Janus is someone we can catch with a badge and a scanner." Harper kept her gaze on the horizon. Janus isn't just a person. He's a pattern, a face in 2 directions. He'll always be one step ahead. Blake didn't argue. Then we force the pattern to show itself. By midday, the conference room hummed with tension. Martinez arrived with two analysts whose eyes darted like birds around every screen. The ghost team sat in silence, David steady as a stone, Razor leaning forward with coiled impatience, Phantom unreadable behind a faint half-smile, Phoenix tapping one boot in a rhythm only she heard, Signal hunched over his tablet like a monk at prayer. Martinez set a small encrypted drive on the table. We intercepted a transmission last night, during the breach. It originated inside this mountain and was relayed through half a dozen satellites before dissolving into deep web noise. We almost missed it. Signal's fingers flew across his keyboard, data blooming on the main screen. A string of characters that looked like chaos until he slowed the feed. A single phrase emerged in pale green letters. GHOSTS only exist when seen. The room went still. That's Janus, Signal said finally. Signature pattern, encrypted in a way I've only seen on the Baltic Op. Martinez folded her arms. He's taunting you. Or inviting us, Harper said. Razor broke the silence, so we hunt. Blake met Harper's eyes. Your call. Harper studied the glowing words. Ghosts only exist when seen. An invitation, a challenge, a trap. We hunt, she said. The trail led to Geneva, a neutral ground where secrets moved as easily as money. Signal traced the transmission to a dormant data node beneath the old banking district, a forgotten server farm sealed behind layers of corporate shell companies. Phoenix piloted them across Europe under civilian cover, the team slipping through airports like ordinary travelers. Harper felt the strange tension of invisibility in a crowd, thousands of lives swirling around them, unaware that a quiet war passed inches from their shoulders. They reached the underground node after nightfall. The entrance was hidden behind a disused maintenance tunnel beneath the city's tram lines. Phantom bypassed the electronic locks with a series of subtle motions that looked almost like sleight of hand. Inside, the space pulsed with faint blue light, rows of dormant servers like silent sentinels. The air smelled of dust and ozone. Signal moved first, connecting a portable rig. I can piggyback the residual trace, he murmured. If Janus left a fingerprint, it's buried here. Minutes stretched. The team held their positions, every sense taut. Then the screens flickered to life, lines of code cascading too fast to read. Signal swore under his breath. It's active, someone's watching us. A voice filled the room, calm, distorted, neither male nor female. Ghosts at last. Harper stepped forward, the sound vibrating in her chest. Janus. Names are masks, the voice replied. You, of all people, should understand. What do you want? You, all of you, proof that the invisible can bleed. The servers flashed, data spiking. On Harper's comm, Signal whispered, he's triangulating our location, feeding it out. We're about to have company. Harper scanned the shadows. Can you trace him back? I can try, Signal said, fingers flying. The voice returned, softer now, almost intimate. You believe you protect the world, but every bullet you fire writes a story someone else will tell. I simply sell the ending. Harper's jaw tightened. And what's your ending? The day ghosts are forced into the light. Gunfire cracked from the tunnel outside. Company, David warned. Razor shifted his stance, blades gleaming in the server glow. Phoenix drew a sidearm, eyes steady. Signal now, Harper barked. Almost got it, he shouted. Backtrace locked, coordinates uploading to our secure channel. Move, Harper ordered. The team fell back through the maintenance tunnels as shadows advanced, armed silhouettes in black tactical gear, their footsteps echoing like a drumbeat of inevitability. Phantom dropped a flash charge that drowned the corridor in white light. They sprinted through smoke and sirens, emerging into the frozen night as the first police units converged on the district. Phoenix steered them into a waiting vehicle, engines roaring as they vanished into Geneva's labyrinth of streets. Back in the safe house, Signal displayed the result of the trace, a single point on a digital map. Not a city, not a building, a mountain. Harper felt her breath catch. The coordinates pointed back to the Rockies, back to home. Sight echo. The flight across the Atlantic was silent. Each of them wrestled with the same realization. Janus hadn't been reaching out from some distant hideout. Janus had been inside their sanctuary from the beginning. Night cloaked the mountains when they arrived. Sight echo appeared normal from the air, quiet, secure, unchanged. But as they approached the landing zone, Phoenix slowed, frowning. "No perimeter beacons," she said. "They're offline." Blake's voice crackled over the comm. "We've lost all internal feeds. Power grid been compromised. I've locked down the command center, but..." The transmission cut to static. Harper met the team's eyes. "We go in hard, no assumptions." They entered through a hidden service tunnel, weapons ready. The familiar corridors felt alien now. Shadows stretched long in the emergency lights. At the command center door, Harper signaled a halt. Inside, a faint blue glow pulsed like a heartbeat. She pushed the door open. Blake stood alone, hands raised slightly, unarmed. Screens around him flickered with the same phrase they'd seen in Geneva. "GHOSTS only exist when seen." "Where's Martinez?" Harper asked. "Gone," Blake said. "Taken, maybe, or she walked out before the breach, I don't know." The speakers crackled. That same calm, distorted voice filled the room. "Welcome home." Harper scanned the walls. "Show yourself." "I already have. I am every channel you trust, every silence you ignore." Signal worked furiously at his console. "I can isolate the source." "You cannot isolate what you are," the voice interrupted. A chill slid down Harper's spine. "What do you mean?" "Ghosts and Janus share the same face. Two directions, one purpose. You kill in secret to keep the world asleep. I reveal secrets to wake it. We are mirrors." David's voice cut the tension. "You betray and you call it truth. We protect." "Protection is simply a slower form of betrayal," the voice said. Blake stepped forward, jaw tight. "What do you want?" "A choice. Remain shadows until someone brighter erases you, or walk into the light and let the world decide if ghosts should exist." The screens flared white, then went black. Silence. Signal exhaled. Connection severed, he's gone. But Harper knew Janus wasn't gone. Not really. Days passed in uneasy quiet. Repairs began, systems hardened. Yet the sense of intrusion lingered like a shadow that no light could banish. Intelligence analysts from half a dozen agencies arrived, demanding answers Harper refused to give. On the ridge one evening, Harper watched the sun sink behind the peaks. David joined her, his breath visible in the cold air. "Do you think we'll ever catch him?" he asked. "Janus isn't a single person," she said. "Not anymore. He's anyone who believes the world should see what we hide." David nodded slowly. "And us. We keep doing what we do, because somewhere tonight someone sleeps because we don't." He gave a faint smile. "Then we stay ghosts." Harper looked back at the compound, lights flickering against the dark. "We stay ghosts," she echoed, "but we never forget that the light is always there, waiting." Later, alone in her quarters, Harper disassembled her rifle with the same quiet precision she had learned years ago. The weapon was flawless, every piece fitting into place like a promise. Yet she paused before reassembling it, her reflection faint in the metal. Janus had said they were mirrors. Maybe he was right. Maybe the line between shadow and light was thinner than she had ever wanted to believe. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the distant sound of rotor blades. A mission would come. Another name, another life to save or end. The world would never know. She closed the rifle case and stood. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Harper stepped into the corridor, the mountain air sharp with the scent of snow, the night vast and waiting. The world slept on. And the ghosts, unseen, uncelebrated, unbroken, moved once more into the dark.